Dylan, let's go. Should bounce, man. Not really comfortable here, bud.
Dylan. Your name is Dylan?
Ladies and gentlemen, we finally get the answer to Link's real name, but now the question is, how is this even possible? We are back breaking down this penultimate episode of Season 2 of Paradise. In this episode, we see Sinatra's dreams are coming true. Meanwhile, Jane's prophecy comes true as well. Meanwhile, Xavier proves to be the world's most patient and nicest man on earth as Terry says goodbye to Gary. And we have an ending that leaves us all with so many questions. With all that being said, we got an episode to break down. Full spoilers ahead. We open this episode 6 years earlier where we find Anders with Sinatra going over and explaining the bunker's full operational systems, including the important tank room, and President Cal is on the tour as well as he has Anders explain it all to him in layman's terms. It's briefly mentioned here that a universal remote which controls the entire bunker, and we'll see that later on in the episode. We see Cal sharing his hopes that this bunker will never have to be put to use, but Sinatra reminds him that the bunker is their future. Flash forward to the final moments of last week's episode where Xavier and Terry, who's not a hallucination, she is in real time, real life, and after taking out some guards and getting almost blown away by an explosion, Xavier and Terry are finally reunited. Terry explains to Xavier that the train crew are good people and they're friends and they're willing to help them go back to the bunker. Xavier tells them why he brought the explosive because of Gary the mailman and what he told them. Now, before they can bring Xavier into the fold, we see Dakota has some questions for him to answer first. Let me tell y'all something right now. Ain't no way in hell Terry would be leaving my sight after the 3 years they've both experienced. But like I said up top, Xavier is a much better man than me, and he agrees to talk to Dakota in the tent without Terry being present. Now, as Xavier heads into the tent for the questioning, Ruth gives Terry a note from Gary saying that he has Bean and he wants her to come home. So I gotta mention, for those of us who wonder what happened to Ruth and Roberto and Bob, I guess it's safe to say that they all went with Terry to join the train crew. Now, I'm going to say it up top because it will be talked about in this breakdown, so I'm just preparing you all now. I have a major issue with this episode, and it kind of boils down to a couple plots. This plot being one of them, and that is the execution or the lack of good execution involving Gary's plot. First thing that comes to mind right now, and something that really bothers me, is the logistics of how Gary got Bean to begin with. When did Terry and Bean get separated? Because as she has shown us throughout these episodes with her in her relationship with Bean, she doesn't let that boy go too far without her at least knowing his whereabouts. So again, when did Gary take Bean? Are we assuming that he took Bean when the explosion happened? Because if so, how would he have known where Bean was? Again, correct me in the comments, but when did Gary take Bean? As we'll talk about later, there's more issues that I have with this particular plot, but again, we'll focus on that when that time comes. Now, back at the bunker, we get our first major clue for a reveal that happens later that ties into a theory that we have been discussing for a few weeks now. As Sinatra gets prepared for her meeting with Link, her and her husband, Tim, reminisce about old times, back when they were more loving and they were closer in their relationship, all before their son Dylan presumably died. Now, that big clue in the scene is when her husband brings up that Dylan would have been 26 years old if he was still alive. Also, a very important detail in this scene is the suit that Sinatra chooses not to wear. Tim suggested she wear the red one for her meeting because it meant that she was bold and she was in control and had power, but instead she chose another color and another outfit altogether. Remember both of these details for a little bit later. Cut to Gabby, where we see her waking up from a nightmare where Jane kills her. We can see that she's on edge after threatening to come for Sinatra, and she's nervous that Jane will be coming for her. We see early on Gabby taking a shower, and this will prove to be very important towards the end of this episode. We see her looking through her notes on who Alex is as she writes that Jane is involved, and speaking of, we see Gabby leaves for the meeting as Jane is outside, willing to give her a lift in that very suspicious, weird, creepy, don't know if you can trust her look as Gabby tells her no thanks. Now at Sinatra's house, we see Hadley filling Presley in on her suspicions about whether others are being held and it being below. She hacks into her mother's computer, and our second major clue is mentioned here as she shares that her mother's password for her computer is Dylan's birthday, which is May 16th. Now on the computer, they find footage of Jeremy as Hadley knows exactly where this is as she grants them access to the prison through their wristbands. Meanwhile, Jeremy's mission to open the doors with the help of Anders and Robertson tagging along continues. Jeremy's main objective is to let the people of the bunker make their own choice, whether that's staying inside the bunker or to venture out into the outside world to maybe seeing if their loved ones are still alive. Now, I'll mention I wasn't the biggest fan of two particular plots in this episode, one being Gary, which we'll talk about later, but the other also being Jeremy and what's going on with Robertson and Anders. I can appreciate Jeremy's efforts, and I can understand what the plot of what they're trying to do with Jeremy, of him honoring his father by speaking up and standing up for the people. But the only thing that's missing is the point of view from the people within the bunker. We've seen maybe, 2 or 3 scenes from season 1 and also in this season, especially in episode 3, where we saw that pushback, where we saw some of the resistance from the people inside of the bunker. That to me isn't enough to justify breaking the doors open for such a small amount of people who, let me remind you all, the people in the bunker chose to be in the bunker and they also chose to leave their loved ones behind. Like if families were split up, they were like, okay, I'm sorry, I love you, but I'm going to the bunker. Sorry, mom. Sorry, best friends. I hope you guys can survive this catastrophic event. So that to me is something that we haven't spent time with, is that perspective. And honestly, again, this subplot, to me, doesn't hold the weight that I believe the show think it does. Now, at this meeting, they go over the protocol, which includes snipers for Sinatra's protection. One of the billionaires mentions turning on the full lockdown, but Sinatra lists off the reasons why that isn't a good idea. If initiated, it could lead to instability and blackouts inside the bunker, but more importantly, it's a massive draw from the power grid. Now, knowing that and knowing what happens at the end, I wonder if this whole lockdown and meltdown will have any effects on Alex. Now in the meeting, we see this tick for tack between Jane and Gabby continues as Gabby convinces Sinatra that Jane shouldn't be able to be a part of the meeting with Link. Now back with Xavier, he gives the group all the information they needed as him and Terry finally get to share a more emotional moment as we see them embracing one another and they talk about how they never gave up hope on each other. Terry shares Gary's note with him as she tries to explain that Bean is her family, and immediately Xavier understands because he knows what it's like to take in a child as he tells her it's time to go get her boy. Now, to add more pressure to the situation, they don't have all day because Dakota lets them know that they'll be leaving for the bunker soon, with or without them if they don't return in time. Now, on their journey, they play catch up about their daughter's dating life, about Cal's death, and Terry shares the relationship between her and Bean, and how important he's become in her life and really was the one thing that kept her going. Xavier lets her know that he's not willing to give Gary a second chance after what he's done, and one mistake by Gary, the mailman, Xavier won't hesitate to get his get back for what happened to them with the explosion. Now in Sinatra's office, Gabby confronts her about coming to some agreement of reestablishing some type of new working relationship between the two since Sinatra's back in charge, as we see Gabby also wants to do this for the betterment of the community. Now Gabby lets Sinatra know that she's aware of Jane's past killings and shares her fears of her potentially being next. Sinatra assures Gabby that she's safe because Jane doesn't act without her guidance. Sinatra shares with Gabby her willingness to make sacrifices because she's working on something important. Now this triggers Gabby to bringing up Alex, which we see Sinatra highly encouraging her to never mention Alex again. Now obviously Sinatra doesn't say why, but we know as an audience the last person to threaten to interfere with Alex was murdered. Now, I think people like Carmen, who remember is the fake maid of Sinatra, and whatever potential secret group they're a part of, who I don't think we've met yet, it's safe to assume that they highly encourage Sinatra to take out anyone who doesn't suppose to know about Alex, and that's why Sinatra told Gabby not to say it again, or else she'll have to do what she did to Baines, which explains the very next scene. We see Jane giving intel on Link's crew to the rest of security as she gets a bing on her phone. It's a map that's tracking Gabby, which means she's got the green light from Sinatra to take her out after showing her that she has knowledge of Alex. Alex is a secret project that Sinatra cannot have anyone knowing about or interfering with, and like she said, she's willing to sacrifice to keep a secret, even if it means she has to kill a person she once considered to be a friend. Now it's time for the meeting as the doors for the bunker open and Sinatra takes a moment to reflect on feeling the warmth of the sun as Link and the others walk in. We see Sinatra handing over the pie and we see him taking a bite and they're making some small talk about Cal's death, but Sinatra wants to get to the important stuff as they both agree to speak alone in the Air Force One. Inside, Link mentions how this meeting is like a Star Wars scene and Sinatra's Vader and he's Luke, which come to think of is actually hilarious considering the movie and considering the big reveal that we're going to get in this episode. Speaking of reveal, we get our third clue, and this is where we see Link telling Sinatra that he's 26 years old. I love this scene so much. I love the back and forth between these two characters, especially what we find out later between these two. But we find out that Link's group actually consists of about 10,000 people, which is pretty crazy. And again, I hope we learn how he became the leader at such a young age. But nonetheless, what I also found very interesting in the scene was the continuous shots of the apple pie. I couldn't tell if the show wanted us to think that the pie was maybe poison or it was messed with, but they really kept showing it in this scene, which again seemed very important. But as the scene goes on, they finally get to what they're meeting for. He wants one of their nuclear reactors to restart the world. Now, it's here that we learn the importance of the pie, and I know last week we were all kind of theorizing that the pie might be a code word for something, but based on this apple pie, Link goes over all the resources needed to make it, and it shows that the bunker has more than enough to spare.
Fresh apples, meaning greenhouses, grow lights, artificial pollination, irrigation. There's a flaky crust on there too. So butter or butter alternative, meaning refrigeration.
Again, Sinatra just wants him to get to the point, and it's here that he finally says it as he tells her he's here for Alex, and the look on her face says it all. Sinatra denies having any knowledge of Alex, and I can only imagine in the back of her head that she's probably like, okay, I'm going to have to kill him as soon as possible, but that is about to change in a little bit as, again, she says that she doesn't know what Alex is, and she basically just ends the meeting as Link takes one more bite of pie, but then he also takes a pin from the plane, and I'm assuming it's just for a souvenir. Now, during this meeting, we catch up with Gabby and she's still on high alert as we see Jane is spying on her to set up her next kill. Meanwhile, now in the control room of the bunker that controls the entire bunker, we see Anders instructs Jeremy and Robinson to destroy the oxygen tanks in order to force the doors to be open. Now, I don't want to nitpick, but it's just really hard for me to believe that this billion-dollar, trillion-dollar system can be forced to open its doors by simply hitting the oxygen tank with fire equipment. Also, is it me or was anyone else wondering where are the people who would probably oversee this or security that would be protecting this area? I know Anders said that the system runs itself, and I get all that, but I'm talking about the door. Like, why aren't there guards outside the door to prevent anyone from getting inside? I'll give them the benefit of the doubt that the man who created this would know how to disarm any alarms, but still, at the end of the day, I just find it so weird that there's no security guards, and I know, like, he wants to atone for his sins, but I was also waiting for him to double-cross them because it just seemed way too easy. Again, I just feel like the writers definitely kind of overlooked some small details when it came to this plot and also Gary's plot, because I feel like everything is just very convenient. Meanwhile, back with X and Terry, they set up their plan to handle the Gary situation. Now, Terry convinces X to let her go in alone, but X reminds her that if Gary acts up, he'll shoot him without hesitation. Again, this is another reason I couldn't really get on board with this Gary plot. Again, y'all, ain't no way in hell you can convince me that Xavier would willingly, I don't care if Terry, I understand she's strong, she's independent, she makes her own choices. We saw her leave for Atlanta and that was a terrible mistake. I get all that, but I don't care because after what they've both experienced, especially Xavier, him getting here, or him almost dying multiple times, you can't convince me that he would be okay with letting Terry go in alone with no weapon. She had no weapon, to remind you all, and not knowing what mindset Gary's in after killing his own best friend. Like, again, y'all, you can't convince. I know Xavier is patient. I know he's a nice guy. I know he likes to see the good in people, but it's the end of the world. It's a different type of world, and he has seen the BS that Gary pulls. And I'm just trying to understand how the writers expect me to believe that he would be okay with letting his wife go in there alone without a goddamn weapon. Let me know what y'all think in the comments below. But as we move on, inside, Terry and Gary have Bean go outside as Gary explains that he would never hurt Bean, but Terry brings up him killing his best friend, which Gary claims was a big mistake. Not to keep mentioning it, but another example of why I didn't like this plot. Why didn't they show us Terry knowing what happened with him killing his best friend? Like, what was the moment? Like, what was the interaction? Like, that whole interaction when she left to go to the train people, was Being with her? What did he do with the body? Like, that just seems like a bunch of filling in the blanks that I don't think the show really fleshed that out well enough for me. Again, I can assume this happened, but I don't like assuming. I just show me what happened. Now, of course, they don't want to give away the reveal in episode 6, but I'm talking about like having a quick flashback, at least her and X, when they were talking about what their daughter's been up to, what happened to Cal. That would have been a perfect time to like show a quick flashback, or her just explaining to Xavier what happened. Again, fill in the blanks for us, the audience, because again, I feel like this whole thing was executed pretty poorly. But again, I love this show. It's so well written. The performances are great. It's really clever. It fills in all the details perfectly. But this just felt so sloppy to me. Now, Gary gets overly emotional about how Terry helps him function properly, and he walks over to her very aggressively. And this is where she has to warn him to calm the hell down before her husband takes him out. Now, we watch as Gary just has a full-on meltdown at this point. He's talking about drowning and not wanting to hurt anyone, and how the last 3 years have been horrible for the world, but for him to be with Terry and Bean, it was the best years of his life. Terry tells him that those 3 years were very important to her as well, but unfortunately, they're over. He walks over to the window wanting to die. I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh, guys. It was just, this scene was very over the top for me and kind of very melodramatic. But
If it's over, just let him take me out. Let him kill me. No, Gary.
he walks over to the window, ready to die. He's ready to call it quits, but Terry steps in front of him and hugs him to prevent him from dying. Despite him being afraid of starting over again and being alone again, she tells him that she believes in him. He can rebuild his life. He won't be forever alone. She trusts that he can find a light again. Terry agrees to let Bean remember the best parts of him as she tells him that she'll remind him of the man that saved them. As we watch, Terry eventually walks out unharmed and takes Bean with her, and we see Gary watches as Bean and Terry and X have one more stop, and that's getting Annie's baby. Look, you might think I'm being harsh, but again, I love this show. I think the writing and the acting and the messages and the themes and the allegories and all that stuff is so well executed. But this, to me, was just not that great. If this is the last of Gary in this whole plot, I gotta say it ended in a very unsatisfying manner for me. I know a lot of you all was a big fan of episode 5. If you go back and watch my review, I wasn't the biggest fan of that episode. I didn't think it was poorly made. I just didn't really know what the Gary plot was getting at. And again, based on how this all wrapped up, it didn't really hit the mark. Now, I can understand to a certain extent why Terry gave Gary so much grace, because it goes back to when she denied his kiss in episode 5 and she told him like she's willing to do anything in her power to repay him for saving her and Bean's life by letting them into the shelter. But still, I feel like the show didn't earn the payoff for Gary. Need I remind you all, Gary killed his best friend. He almost killed the main character of the show. And he tried to take his wife by doing the whole fake playhouse son and wife and just to end up alone again. Now, let me know in the comments, how did you all feel about this potentially being the end of Gary's story? Like, I am curious to know, like, when he walked back inside, did he take his own life, or does he think he can start over? Maybe he goes to the market with the married couple and tries to find happiness. I'll end by saying this. Gary better be lucky this isn't the world of The Walking Dead, because if Xavier was Rick Grimes and if that was Lori or Carl or Michonne, Gary would be a dead man. He would be mailing himself his own obituary because he would be a dead man because Rick didn't play no games. But we all know Xavier isn't Rick Grimes. Xavier is a good man. He's a kind-hearted man. He doesn't like to kill people that he doesn't think deserve to be killed. But I tell you this, man, if I was Xavier, I would have lied to Terry. I would have said, baby, you know what? I forgot something on the roof. I'm going to meet you at the market. I would have went back in that post office and beat the hell out of Gary for trying to kill me. Now back at the bunker, as she walks Link out, telling him that the bunker can't be overtaken, he lets her know that he will eventually get Alex. Sinatra responds by saying that she'll do anything in her power to protect Alex, and she refers to Alex as a her. Link gets in her face and calls her out for all the horrible things she's done to get to her position, as Griner sees Link is getting confrontational, and he calls him by his real name, Dylan. Sinatra immediately turns back to Samantha again when she hears that name, and she grabs him by his arm and she asks him what his birthday is, as we see both sides draw their weapons. Now, Dylan reveals his birthday is on May 16th. Again, all the lines are crossing up, all the answers are being given to us in this moment, as his nose starts to bleed, and Sinatra does as well as he walks away. But before he walked away, he promises he's going to take everything away that she's built. Now, one little detail that I can completely be wrong about is this. This shot of Grainer here, looking back at Sinatra, is it me or does he resemble Tim, Sinatra's husband, but a much older version of her husband? Does Dylan and Grainer, aka Tim, come from another timeline? A timeline where Dylan lives, but he doesn't have Tim or Sam as his parents? Man, I wish I did reactions for this show like I've done for other shows, because when they said the name Dylan, my jaw hit the floor when his name was revealed, because we finally found out the name of Link, which we all knew that wasn't his real name, but for it to be Dylan, it's great, because number one, we talked about this being a possibility in our theory video a couple weeks ago, and god damn it, it seems to be true. But now the $1 million question is, how is this possible? I immediately, after this episode, I went back to episode 2 of last season, which was the Sinatra episode, because I just wanted to see all the details. It was never shown, but heavily implied, that after about 1.5 years of battling this unknown illness, that Dylan had died. Again, I think there's a lot of details there. We don't know what type of illness Dylan had and what he suffered with. And again, I come from the school of if there's nobody dead. We never saw a funeral, and we never learned, again, what he died of. So now I'm wondering if he truly died. Again, I know the show has implied that he's died, he's no longer with us, but what does that actually mean? Like, I'm starting to think, did Sinatra like do something to him in revolving, like, did she take his body and have him be involved or connected to Alex in some way? Man, this week's theory video is going to be a lot of fun, so go ahead and start now. Sound off in the comments your reaction to this moment, and what predictions, what theories do you all have that would explain how Link is Dylan? And also, let me know your thoughts and theories on the nosebleed situation. We've seen Xavier have a nosebleed. We've seen Billy. Obviously, we know Link, aka Dylan, and now Sinatra. I'll share some of my thoughts about that a little bit later, but let me know what you all think about all that in the comments below. Now, back at home, Sinatra tells her husband that it worked and immediately starts kissing Tim, and she tells him that she can't explain it right now, but she thinks that Dylan's going to be okay. They continue to get more intimate, and maybe for the first time in years, because she's now happy for the first time since Dylan's quote-unquote death, but apparently he's now back somehow. Now, here's the thing about him being back. Clearly, he has no knowledge of Sam being his mom based on the conversation, how they interacted on the plane and that whole meeting. So again, it makes me believe that he's from another timeline, but how did he get to their timeline? My brain right now is all over the place about this reveal. Are we talking about a time machine? Are we talking about multiple timelines, quantum entanglement? Hell, are aliens involved? Like, what the hell are we headed towards in next week's finale? Now we go back to the flashback and we see Cal brings up all sorts of things that would try to get into the bunker, but Anders and Sinatra assure him that they've played out every scenario and the bunker can withstand anything thrown at it, and the once impossible has now been made possible. Now, at the end of their tour, we see Cal shares with Sinatra the history of all the fallen empires, including some of the sports dynasties that were once known to be atop of their game, and they were never meant to fail, but they ultimately did. Now, the speech was cut between Dylan making the plans to strike the bunker in the morning as the billionaires see them, and they're scared because they now know they're about to be attacked. With Sinatra missing, the billionaires agree to go on a full lockdown. Meanwhile, we see Sinatra walking into a secret area, and you'll notice something that I mentioned earlier. She's now wearing the red outfit her husband had suggested to her at the start. The one that makes her look bold and powerful as she's about to meet someone or something very important. Presley and Hanley make it into the prison while Robertson and Jeremy destroy the oxygen tanks as they're setting off the doors to be opened. Now at Gabby's, Jane is there with a gun in hand and she makes her moves to take her out, but here is where the prophecy from last week comes true. Gabby used the shower steam to trick Jane into thinking she's vulnerable while she was taking a shower like she was earlier in the episode, as Jane has let her guard down and she gets stabbed in the back. It appears she's dead, and remembering Don's message last week that she can be stopped, and it looks like Gabriella took that message without knowing the message and she killed the killer. Now, let's talk about this scene because it is very big. This is a character we've all been waiting to die, but I kind of feel weird about it, especially after getting her backstory and now she's gone. I guess you can say that the same thing happened to Billy last season. Like, we finally figured out who Billy really was in his episode and he died at the end of that episode. But again, it was all within one episode. So we didn't see Jane die last week. So I was under an assumption that Jane was going to have more to do, but not anymore. She appears to be dead. Now, I guess those unanswered questions remain unanswered. So what happened to her mom? What happened to Stacy? How did she go from being kicked out of the CIA to being the Secret Service working next to the president? But where's her father? But if she is dead, I guess there is some poetic justice to be had because she was a backstabber and she died being stabbed in the back. And just thinking about, again, the poetic justice of it all, someone like Billy who never expected Jane to kill her because she kept that side of her hidden. And here we are seeing Gabby. Jane would have never expected her to best her, and she underestimated her enemy, and that ended up getting her killed. Now, the only way I could see Jane not being dead is if Gabby feels like she doesn't want to be a killer. She doesn't want to become Jane. She doesn't want to become Sinatra. So she calls for help and she saves her life. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think one of my biggest takeaways, besides the death of this big character in Jane, who, again, I know we've all been waiting for her to die, but I was hoping for it to be like a grand finale type of thing, like either next week or sometime in like the series finale. But besides that main death, it's that Gabby most likely can put two and two together and realizes that Jane was sent there to kill her by Sinatra, which means that she fully understands what Sinatra's capable of and she can no longer trust her. But more importantly, she also understands that Alex isn't something to take lightly. Now, unfortunately for the people in the bunker, with two major system things happening at the same time, which is the lockdown and the oxygen tanks being destroyed, it causes a complete system error, and Anders sees that there is a meltdown that's about to happen, and we can see from the screen, this ain't a good thing. Radiation being exposed, oxygen going everywhere, and I don't think some people are going to make it out of this alive. And those people I'm referring to happen to be stuck in the elevator, and that's Presley and Hanley, who I think might be in trouble. Now, I don't know if the show's going to get this dark, but I'm thinking right now, what if Xavier and Sinatra are about to both lose their kids? I mean, think about it. Both characters essentially kind of got their family back in a way in this episode, and they could potentially lose a member of their family now because maybe the oxygen in the elevator and during the shutdown takes both of them out. Again, Sinatra gets her son back in a way, potentially, and we see Xavier gets Terry back in a way, but now, again, it looks like they might lose someone close to them. Now, we end this episode with seeing X and Terry and Annie's baby and Bean on a train as Xavier's nose begins bleeding, and he sees that memory that he has yet to experience again, but this time around, it looks pretty familiar for us, the audience. We see Sinatra makes it to her destination, as when she's walking, you'll see the area is the exact same place from Xavier and Dylan's memory as she enters into this unknown room. We watch as she puts on this lab coat and she begins to put a smile on her face as this orange aura light brightens the room, and Sinatra says,
Hi, Alex.
who the hell is, or what the hell is Alex? Remember, she referred to Alex as a her earlier in this episode, so is her this AI quantum machine that can take the form of a human who has the abilities to change or alter reality itself, or maybe manipulating multiple timelines? Again, my head is spinning right now, but the only thing I can think of is multiple timelines, because how the hell is adult Dylan the same Dylan that is Sinatra's son? And just thinking about Sinatra and the lead up to the Dylan moment, when did she know that Alex was capable of maybe bringing back some version of her son again? Like, what exactly is Alex capable of? I just have so many questions, and one of them pertains to the nosebleed. I have this feeling that the nosebleed is because the characters are about to experience a point in time that maybe shouldn't exist. Thinking about the characters again, we know Billy didn't kill Link, so that was probably important and probably was not supposed to happen. We saw Xavier flying over Arkansas and those bad pockets that Link talked about, and now traveling to the bunker with Annie's baby, who I don't think is supposed to exist. These are like examples of things that weren't a part of Alex's plans, potentially. Thinking about Sinatra meeting Dylan and her nose bleeding, her meeting her quote unquote dead son probably wasn't a part of the plans. Like, it's not a natural order of whatever timeline that Alex had set in place. I'm going to leave more theories to our theory video, but my thoughts about this episode are the following. Obviously, I'm thinking about the last episode 7 in season 1, which was maybe the best episode of TV last year. It was an excellent episode of television, and I can't help but to compare last season's penultimate episode and this season's penultimate episode because it pales in comparison. But the reunion with Xavier and Terry, great. Sinatra, Dylan meeting, the reveal, Gabby, Jane ending, that stuff, phenomenal. The Gary of it all, the mission to open the doors, Jeremy, Presley, like all that stuff to me just wasn't good. So I'm kind of torn about this episode. But like, I feel like it was a good episode of television, but maybe not the best penultimate episode before the finale. But I hope the setup in this episode leads to a better finale, because I did not like season 1 finale. Again, the Trent reveal to me was so sloppy, but I'm hoping that the finale is better than last year. So here's where my mind is. Like, I thought episode 7, penultimate episode, fantastic, but the finale wasn't great for season 1. So maybe it's the reverse. The penultimate episode this year was not the best in my eyes. So I'm hoping that maybe the finale is much better than last year's finale. So that's where my mind's at right now. With all that being said, that will conclude my breakdown of episode 7, the penultimate episode of season 2 of Paradise. Friendly reminder that after each episode breakdown, I like to make a separate video focusing on all the theories and predictions, especially for this week, with us going into the finale. So in the comments right now, let me know your theories, and if you want your theory to potentially be included in this week's theory video, put a little asterisk or comment. Please consider my theory. The other option is, I did this last week. I don't know if a lot of people saw that, because I know YouTube has a weird thing with algorithms and what you all see and don't see. But on Tuesday, I made a post, a community post that's like dedicated to all theories. So you can just dump all your theories and predictions. And again, if you want them to be shown in this week's video, that can be a place where you can let me know where you want your theories to be shared. Again, y'all, thank you for watching or listening to this week's breakdown. If you all have made it to this point in the breakdown, congratulations. You are the best of the best. do me a favor, put in the comments right now, #Dylan. If you all are watching this on YouTube, please consider hitting that like button if you enjoyed this breakdown. Hitting the hype button really helps because it gets the video in front of new viewers. Speaking of new viewers, consider sharing the video to anyone and everyone you know that loves talking about this show. And more importantly, share your thoughts in the comments. And consider sticking around by subscribing to the channel today. If you are listening to this via podcast, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, wherever you all get your podcasts from, please leave your thoughts in the comments. Consider following the podcast, and I would love it if you all can leave me a 5-star review. Alrighty, y'all, we'll be back later in the week with our theory video before the finale. In the meantime, don't forget that you all are awesome, stay safe, and I'll see you all again soon.